Um, I am back on autoimmune conditions completely for the moment. I'm going to talk about Sjògren's Syndrome. Now, I'm actually really enjoying this concept of going through these conditions. I probably get far too much enjoyment about looking into these conditions than I should. But it is fun, and I am enjoying it. But these conditions are not sensitive as such, but they are a little controversial to a point. People do need to know about these things. They're not always that noticeable. They're not always things that people automatically go, oh, that's what that is. Oh yeah, I can see what that is. That's noticeable. I know exactly what it is. You know, or you hear a name and go, oh yeah, I can picture it. You know, when you hear names like Sjògren Syndrome. Now, growing up, that's a name that was in your head, and you'd hear it from time to time. Never really paid much attention to it or really kind of thought about it. It's one of those weird kind of syndromes that you just sort of, what? Okay, weird. You don't really know what to picture in your head because you don't know what to think about when someone says stuff like that. So looking into this kind of stuff is actually kind of fascinating because you learn where those kind of things come from and why, when you're little, hearing strange words like Sjògren's made no sense at all. I mean, I picture stuff like that as like samurai swords and people fighting. I mean, realistically, you look at things like that and people go, it's a Sjògren Syndrome. You automatically picture like Japanese people in like full on like samurai gear. Sorry, but I did. You know, you just don't put it side by side with a medical condition. But I suppose somebody did. Anyway. So when I was making a list of like autoimmune conditions and stuff like that, and this came up, I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Autoimmune conditions aren't something most people kind of think of as being real or common. They look at them as being something rare that doctors don't pay much attention to. But they actually are far more common than people imagine. So let's do this. Sjògren Syndrome is actually a condition that affects your teardrop, like your tear ducts and your saliva glands and things like that initially. And I say initially because they're the first thing it affects. It is most common in women. And usually between the age of 40 and 60, that is kind of its age range for it to start. It is a long-term condition. It has no cure, none. It does affect your everyday life. It really does. And it can usually, as a rule, if you end up with things like Sjògren Syndrome, it's because you already have another condition, things like lupus or even things like a rheumatoid arthritis, because it kind of runs side by side with it. So with Sjògren's has things like the mucus and the membrane and the moisture in your secreting glands of your eyes and your mouth are these very first things that it affects. It just starts by decreasing those like the production of those glands to the point where it will stop completely. That is what it is. That is what it does. That is the main thing that you will notice as this condition takes hold. Okay, now nobody will ever know 100% what any of these ever conditions do. But as it's an autoimmune disorder, as with all autoimmune disorders, your body will attack itself and mistake healthy cells and tissues for unhealthy cells and tissues and start attacking them. And that is what an autoimmune condition is. It's where your immune system starts attacking the healthy cells and tissues rather than attacking like unhealthy ones, things that like shouldn't be there. It just starts attacking itself. If people develop this condition, they find that with all of them there's a lot of things at stake, at risk and things like that. The highest people risk, there's certain genes that people have that put them at higher risk than others, but they've also found that this condition is triggered by viruses and bacterial infections. I couldn't find exactly which one they think triggers it, but it is there. But it's the first thing it targets is your glands, your tear ducts, saliva glands, and then it will move through your body and it starts targeting your joints, your thyroid, your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, your skin and your nerves. So it affects your whole body. But it starts with your gland, your tear ducts and your saliva, starts with your eyes and your mouth and then moves through the rest of your body. That is kind of how it works. So it's not a nice condition as it progresses. It starts off fairly kind of, oh yeah, okay, you've got dry eyes and a dry mouth. Okay, we can kind of work with this. This isn't too bad, but it's not nice as it progresses. Those at risk in getting this are those who have one or more of the known risk factors. Those who are either 40 or over, predominantly women, because it affects more women than men, and already have a rheumatic disease, or things like lupus, because that puts you at much higher risk. So if you have if you are like over 40, if you are female, or if you have either rheumatic diseases like arthritis or anything like that, or lupus, you are much higher risk for Sjògren's. So every woman 40 and over is screwed right now. So that's me and my sister, well, at least one of my sisters, that's us screwed, right off the bat, so we shall see. And it doesn't help that I already have dry eyes, My tear ducts are not blocked. There's nothing wrong with my tear ducts. I just don't produce much moisture in my eyes, so I don't know if that counts. So some of the biggest complications that they found with this are they do generally just involve your eyes and your mouth. Things like dental cavities, because your saliva, what it does is your saliva doesn't just protect your mouth from things like bacteria and infections and stuff, it affects your teeth and your gums as well. That's its job, is to keep the whole of the mouth free from bacteria and viruses and things like that. Without your saliva, as your glands begin to sort of shut down and stop working, and your mouth dries right out. Without that saliva to keep your mouth healthy, you are at higher risk for dental cavities and yeast infections. So things like oral thrush. Now, most people think of thrush and they think women, particularly nice private areas, but you can get oral thrush. In fact, it doesn't look nice and it's not very pleasant. My son was born with it. It really is horrible. And then of course you get things like vision problems, because without your tear ducts, now your tear ducts do a really amazing job. What they do is, as you blink, it puts a layer of moisture. Every time you blink, what happens is it activates the tear ducts and produces a layer of moisture across the eyes, like the corneas and stuff, to keep your eyes from drying out. If your tear ducts stop working, your eyes will completely dry out. It leads you to having things like a light sensitivity, because without any moisture on your eyes, without that layer of protection, your eyes become very sensitive to the light because they're really dry, and then you can end up with things like cornea damage because you're constantly scratching, because when your eyes dry out you get really, really itchy, and they do get really, really itchy when they're dry, which leads to things like you can end up with scratches on your cornea if you're not careful. I've had a couple, they're really not nice. Like I said, my eyes are really dry, and although mine haven't dried out completely, my eyes are really dry. I'm on 2 different types of eye drops. I'm on an eye drop and an eye ointment that I have to use overnight to keep my eyes moisturised. So yeah, it is not nice having to live like that. You know, I go outside generally with my sunglasses on in the summer, even if it's cloudy, because the sun is so high, it actually still affects my eyesight. I can still very sensitive of it. It is a bit insane. I sit in the dark by the afternoon. Curtains are closed because the light goes right in. I have to close the curtains in the house. Otherwise I can't handle the light. It's just too bright. It is insane. So it's not fun. Yeah, it's like middle of the summer, and if I'm indoors in the afternoon, I have to close my curtains, and yeah, it's not fun. I sit in the dark because, yeah, it's too bright in my house. So yeah. So yeah, having dry eyes isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just an annoyance. More to the point, it is an annoyance. But it's easily manageable as long as you have a good pair of sunglasses and some decent eye drops and eye ointments. It's easily manageable. Some of the less common complications are things with livers, lungs and kidneys. So if you get inflammation, you could lead to things like pneumonia or bronchitis, or other lung issues and problems. It could end up with a kidney infection, or which could cause things like hepatitis. You could end up with cirrhosis of the liver, and some people end up with things like lymphoma. For those who don't know it, lymphoma is a cancer of the lymph nodes. And of course it can affect your nerves, so you'll have things like numbness, tingling, burning in hands and feet, which is called a peripheral neuropathy. That's not nice either. That's really not nice. That is more than an annoyance. That is horrible. With my FND, I get that. It's friggin' horrible. It's not nice when your hands and your feet, you start getting tingly and numb. And when my feet burn, I feel like I'm walking on hot coals. It's not nice. Yeah. So, but that's just like what this condition does to you before we get to the main symptoms. Yeah, this is just the complications of this symptom. But I mean, the main symptoms you're looking at are things like dry eyes, which will burn, itch, or feel gritty, like there's sand in them. I should have done it the other way around, realistically, but I didn't write it the other way around, so I don't care. So then we get things like dry mouth, so it feel like there's cotton in your mouth, and you won't be able to swallow. Speaking might be really difficult. And there are other symptoms, obviously, like joint pain, swelling and stiffness, swollen glands, especially sort of behind the jaw, so you're sort of looking up here, and behind and in front of your ears, so sort of those ones. So then you've got things like skin rashes or dry skin, vaginal dryness, persistent dry cough. Because your mouth is so dry, your throat will dry out, so you'll end up coughing, and it will just be persistent. And then things like prolonged fatigue, so you'll just constantly feel tired. What time is it? Oh, I'll be able to do this in one video. That'd be kind of cool. So to get a diagnosis of this, there is a few steps to getting a diagnosis of this. And the first thing you need to do is get a blood test, because they need to look for specific antibodies in your blood. They need to look for certain blood proteins to signify whether or not you've got Sjògren's. And then you need to have all these other tests done. Okay, so to get an official diagnosis, we have a list of things that need to happen. So, biggest thing that needs to happen is you need to have a blood and urine test. They need to look for antibodies and anti-nuclear antibody tests. So that's what that's doing, to determine if you have an autoimmune disorder. So that is the first thing they're going to do. So they're going to use the blood test to check for this protein to see whether or not you've got Sjògren's. Then they will look for this anti-nuclear antibody in your urine to see if you have an autoimmune disease. We're ready for this. Then you have to have a Schirmer's test, and that's on your tear glands. And it's to check to see if you are producing enough tears to keep your eyes moist. Now, when you go and see the optometrist at the hospital, they will produce this test. Now, it's a weird kind of test because they check your eyes for everything. Because the next one you do is an ocular surface staining. So they'll put like drops in your eyes to check the surface of your eyes for damage and dryness, and then you stick you on this freaking machine. And then you will be stuck on this machine for a bit while they check your eyes, like freaking machine going in and out your eye like this, and you'll be sitting there going, your eyes wide open. It's weird kind of test. I mean, when they were doing that to me, they were looking for other things, but yeah, they found that as well. So they were looking at the surface of my eye. And yeah, it's a very weird thing to be doing. Yeah, it's a weird test. It's not uncomfortable. It's just weird to be sat there on this weird machine while this like projector thing comes in and out of your face, looking at your eye. It's strange. And of course you've got these drops in your eyes, so everything kind of hurts, because obviously you can't blink too much, because if you blink too much, they have to. Just don't. I don't get my eyes done. It's annoying. You can tell I go to the hospital a lot. So they need to do a saliva gland function scan. In fact, they do a few of these, and they look at the glands on the side of your neck. So they'll do these ones. Okay. The ones below your ears, so they'll do these ones. And the ones under your jaw, so they're looking at those ones there. Just to check the functioning of your saliva glands. That could be fun. So I have no idea what kind of things they'll do with that, because I've never had stuff like that done. And then they'll take a biopsy of your lip to look for inflammation of the saliva gland and for any tears. It will also tell them the type of inflammation and the severity. It's performed on the gland just under the inner lip, so it's like that one there. As it's the easiest to access, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, just one just on the under the inner lip. It makes perfect sense that they're accessing that one, you know. Now this one I've never heard of. I mean, a syometry, I've never heard that. It sounds like it's supposed to be with some other word. I mean, syometry. Sounds like there's something missing from that. It's like it's supposed to be like either in the middle of a sentence or attached to something else. Syometry. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it should be on its own. Or maybe that's just me. But that word just doesn't feel right saying on its own. It just sounds like it should be alongside other words. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but syometry and so, I don't know, it just seems like it doesn't belong on its own word. Syometry. Just feels like it belongs in a sentence. Like in the middle of a sentence. Sorry. A bit distracted by the word. Sorry. This measures your saliva. It just depends on, tells them how much saliva you're producing. Sorry. And then an ultrasonographer. That is just testing the major saliva gland. It tests the saliva gland to check that there will reveal any structural changes. Because if there's any structural changes inside the saliva itself, it will help you get a diagnosis as far as they're concerned. So once you've jumped through like several hoops and like gone through this list of hundreds of like different procedures, and you manage to get a diagnosis of Sjògren Syndrome, you'll get treated, and this will be fun. Oh, cool. Again, there is no cure, but they do come up with a treatment plan for you. Now, the treatment plan is fairly simple, because what they do is they discuss with you preventative measures on your part, so things like you can do to help yourself. So when it comes to your eyes and your mouth, things like regularly checkups with your opticians, using a humidifier at home and if you can at work, avoiding things like reading long time or watching TV long time, or things like being on your laptop, computer, phone, tablets for long periods of time. Things like doing that you should be avoiding. You know, and a few other things if they feel it's appropriate. You know, but things like cutting down on like reading, work, watching TV, laptop, computer, tablets, things like that, cutting down on all of that, as well as regular checkups and stuff. They recommend all that. And when it comes to your mouth, things like proper oral hygiene, you know, so brushing twice a day, making sure it's with a fluoride toothpaste. avoiding sugar, pretty much like sugary foods and drinks, and stopping the snacks between meals. Use an antibacterial mouthwash, drinking plenty of water, chewing gum or sucking on ice cubes to make your mouth water, to produce the saliva artificially. If your lips are dry or cracking, to use things like lip balm. Avoiding or cutting down on the alcohol, and the same with smoking. There are medications for both, so they'll do things like your eye drops and ointments. And if necessary, so if there is damage or whatever, they will give you a course of eye drops with steroids in them if they need to. And if necessary, they will prescribe a tablet called pilocarpine, which they can also prescribe for the rest of it as well. So if there's an issue with your mouth, they'll prescribe that as well. And if they need to, or feel the need to, they can also perform a tear duct blockage to stop the tears draining away, and therefore coating, it will help produce a coating on the eyes themselves to help them feel less dry during the day. But with the mouth, they'll recommend things like getting sprays, medicated sprays and gels, even lozenges. Find something that works that will help produce the saliva artificially. It is called producing a saliva substitute, getting a substitute for the saliva. It's just ways to help that production. Not everybody can use pilocarpine. So if your doctor suggests that, talk to them about it, have a thorough consultation about it, because, you know, not everybody can use it. As far as your skin is concerned, moisturisers are useful. I would absolutely guarantee that if you're having dry skin, move on to paraben-free moisturisers, soaps, shampoos, conditioners. Get them paraben-free, because the paraben will dry out your skin. So find moisturisers, soaps, shampoos, conditioners that are paraben free, and there are quite a few out there. They're more expensive, but they are better for your skin. They will help your skin a lot better. We live on them. My son's allergic to parabens, so we have a whole supply of paraben free everything, because he's allergic to parabens and I'm allergic to a lot of different types of soap anyway. Have been my whole life. I've got to be careful what I put on my skin. So paraben free stuff is useful, and you find it in a lot more of the children's stuff. So Child Farm is really good. When it comes to shampoos and conditioners, Dove is paraben free. But I quite like the Palmer's. The Palmer's shampoo and conditioner is paraben free. That's really nice. So yeah. And their moisturisers are they're Palmer's moisturisers. They're also paraben free as well. So yeah, they're better for your skin. They won't dry it out. So if you're having those kinds of issues, they're the kinds of things you need to look into. Of course, for women who are having intimate dryness, obviously if you're going to have, how do we put this without being coarse, fun time with your partner, lubricants are good. So find one that works for you. If you're having dryness in your intimate areas, there are moisturisers out there for them. I actually did look it up. I don't know if they're paraben free or whatever, I just actually looked it up. So there's things like the Yes VM Organic Gel, Natural Moisturiser for menopause support, Yemi Daily Tea Tree Oil, and Replend KK028901 Moisturiser. They're just like a few that I looked up just to see how many there were out there. Women can also use things like HRT, and then there's things like physiotherapy for muscle and joint issues, and ibuprofen, and then weight loss. And there is a medication that they use for people who have these kind of issues. I cannot, well, I'll try to pronounce it. It's hydroxychloroquine. 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 I don't know if that's right. Oh, we're on 30 minutes. I might as well finish it. I did find, after doing all that, that there was something that I missed when I was looking at like complications and stuff. And although it wasn't major, it is an issue. Women can get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby, although if during all their blood tests and whatever else they find a certain antibodies or whatever, if they are planning to get pregnant, they need to talk to their doctors, because I'm assuming when they get diagnosed, if they find certain antibodies, although I couldn't find which one it was because I can't deal with all that research, there's a hell of a lot of information, and I couldn't even get onto a couple of those sites because they kept telling me it wasn't available. I don't know why, but they weren't. I was in the wrong country and I couldn't get the information because I was in the wrong country, so it wouldn't let me onto about 2 sites. So yeah, I couldn't find which antibody it was, but there's an antibody in Sjògren's that if you have it and you get pregnant, it can cause small risks. And those, if you have it, means that when you're pregnant, you just need to make sure that, well, what will happen is you will have extra care both during your pregnancy with the specialist and after the birth as well, because you're at higher risk for things like, for your baby to be born with things like heart problems, or even something like a rash which could last a few weeks. So they're not major issues. I mean, the heart problem is, but the rash isn't. You just need to take extra care. And I also found that people with Sjògren's could also be at risk for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as well. So yeah, which I did find really interesting. And yeah, I thought I'd be able to do this in 2, but actually I did the whole thing and forgot to look at the time. So yeah, I'm going to see you guys later. And I'm sorry it's so long. Bye.